Hello. If you have ended up on this video and you don't know who I am going to be shocked. My name is Regan. I'm a photographer and content creator in Oklahoma City. Today I want to talk about some of the mistakes I have made since starting my business and starting photography so that hopefully you do not make those same mistakes. So let me give you a little context and some background about myself. It is now 2021. So I have almost been shooting professionally for 10 years. I started shooting professionally, I say professionally, in 2012. I started by taking headshots during university because I went to a school with a lot of performers and artists who needed headshots for auditions. I did that for 2 or 3 years until I graduated from college, in which I kind of stopped shooting until I moved to France, where I got into travel photography and making YouTube videos, which I'm doing now and I still really love doing. Then after I came back to the US, I do some shoots here and there, some lifestyle, some headshots, things like that. But I really started taking it seriously as like a viable form of income in January 2020, which RIP. In January that year, I moved into a studio, which I have a vlog on the channel for, and I pretty much moved out of it in June and was like, what the heck am I gonna do now? But thankfully, over the past year and a half, I have grown so much as a business owner. So I just wanted to share some of the things I've learned and dig into those mistakes that I've made. So hopefully you can not feel so bad if you've made the same mistakes, or learn from mine and not make them at all. So let's jump in. And let's really jump into the deep end. Let's just talk about it. Money. I made so many mistakes when it came to charging for photography. This has honestly been the hardest part for me, is that I just constantly undercharge. And I didn't even realize how bad it was until I calculated my cost of doing business, or CODB. If you're in any kind of Facebook or graphic design or creative business groups, you'll see this a lot. So basically what I did is I made a spreadsheet and I put in all of my monthly and annual charges to figure out literally how much it cost me to run a business. And I had all of these because I already have a separate checking account for photography. If you don't keep your business expenses separated already, do that right now. Just open an extra checking account. So when I was calculating my cost of doing business, I took all of those operating expenses, and then I was able to determine, based on how many shoots I want to do per year, how much I should actually be charging. And it was a lot higher than I had been charging. Looking at what my break even is, my space to literally make no money, just to pay the bills, I was charging less than that, which essentially means that I was paying people to let me take their photo. When I realized that, I raised my rates, obviously. Also, if you haven't calculated your cost of doing business yet, you should probably just take what you think you should be charging and triple it. You have to remember, you are not your ideal client. I would so often get caught in this mind warp of oh, I should be charging $250 because that's what I would pay for a shoot, but $250 didn't even cover my expenses. And so, no, you should look at the hard, cold numbers and use that to decide how much you should be charging, and don't let anyone else tell you you're worth less than that. Another thing that really helped me was something called the profit first method. I saw one of my favorites, Weekend Creative, recommend this, and I'm gonna be honest, I have not read all of it yet because I just have trouble committing to a book. But this also really helped me raise my rate. So let's just say that I'm charging $1,500 for a day-long shoot. See, I took out 30% for taxes, my operating expenses, and then I looked at how much was actually left. And let's say out of $1,500, only $700 was left for me to take home. I realized that that was not enough. So that was like honestly the fastest way for me to say, okay, you need to raise your rates. And then I validated that with my cost of doing business spreadsheet that I made. I will put a link to it in my description if you want to use it as well. Eye-opening. So often when you're starting out, you will work for free to build your portfolio, and I did the same. I did this when I was building my food portfolio because I didn't really have any experience. I thought, if I'm consistently practicing this every week, that's fine. I'll build my portfolio really quickly. But I made a mistake in that I didn't know when to stop working for free. I did free shoots. Oh God, this is so embarrassing, but it's fine. I did free shoots every week or every other week for like 6 to 8 months. And at a certain point, I no longer needed things for my portfolio. At a certain point, it was no longer benefiting me to work for free. And so I just I didn't know how to set that boundary, and the relationship just kind of ended up dying off. But I really regret not setting a finite amount of time on the things that I did for free. Work for free to build your portfolio. You can charge to build your portfolio as well, but just put limits and put boundaries on. I would honestly recommend, if you work for free, do it once, or if you think it's going to be an ongoing relationship, do it for a month to 3 months, and then after that you can stop and reassess how much you should be charging. So many people do it and they get stuck into this, and I relate because I have been there very recently, but it's not a healthy place to stay. Let's talk about clients, because this is another really challenging part about running a photography business. Early on, oh my God, not even early on, recently, I am still learning how to do this, is properly manage expectations. And so, for example, I had a shoot that the timeline dragged on way longer than it needed to. Normally, I have things done in a month max, and this dragged on to 6 months. Ultimately, that's my fault. I didn't discuss the timeline beforehand. I didn't have any kind of language in my contract about a timeline and what happens if a timeline is extended. I was left feeling really frustrated with the situation that I probably could have corrected by being more clear and being better at setting expectations before the shoot. And also, that comes along with communicating your value. For a long time, I just didn't realize what was valuable to the client. And so I didn't communicate that effectively. And so people didn't want to pay my rates because they didn't see the value in what I was providing, because I didn't just outright tell them. It's funny because a lot of the things that you will take for granted, my skills that I take for granted, are the things that people will hire and pay you for. Actually, I got one of my clients recently because they wanted gifts for social media, but they just didn't have the time to invest in learning how to shoot them, learning how to set up, learning how to plan for them, learning how to edit them. And so they hired me to do that. And it's things that just seem so obvious to us that we take for granted that are some of the most valuable things that you offer. Communicating that properly goes a long way in helping you validate why you charge the amount you do. Once you are confident in your skills and once you do know your cost of doing business, it is so much easier to say no to projects that really aren't a good fit. I used to be so confused by people who would say, oh yeah, I do a discovery call to see if this person is a good fit. And I was like, I think everyone's a good fit because I can solve everyone's problem. But now that I know, this is my process, these are my timelines, this is how much I charge, it is so much easier to decide if I really am a good fit for someone. I get overwhelmed so easily when I'm working on a bunch of different projects at a time. Being able to choose just 2 projects per month that I really, really want to work on that are a good fit has been so fulfilling for me and has taken me away from burnout when I was charging low rates, trying to get every single client, trying to meet all of their needs perfectly for no money at all. So now I feel like I can actually enjoy the process because I have enough time to plan for it. I have enough time to wrap my head around things, all because I'm setting clearer boundaries, so it's easier for me to say, oh, this person is or is not a good fit, and then actually work on projects that I'm like really, really excited about. Another thing that I have learned is that I cannot be too trusting. A lot of times when I started, I would work without a contract. Just because like it's really hard to put all of this paperwork together at the beginning, didn't know what to put in it, so it'd just be like, yeah, let's do a shoot, let's go. For example, let me give you a specific example. So I was taking these photos, and then it's not the person's fault, but they sent the photos off to someone else, used for social media advertising purposes, which is like, no. If we're sending it off to that person, they need to pay us for it. And yeah, I didn't communicate that clearly, and I was really upset by it, but at the end of the day, that was my fault. I didn't have them sign a contract or a usage agreement, and so of course they wouldn't know that because we didn't cover it in the contract part. And for me, it has been so important to have things in writing just so that if something does go wrong, whether it's out of malice or whether it's out of ignorance, I have a way to make sure that I am protected. And along with that, when I was building my portfolio, I often would not take any money because like it's a free shoot. So I'd be like, okay, I'd reserve a studio space. I'd be like, hey, meet me at this time here and we're gonna do this. And I found that a lot of times people just wouldn't show up, or they would like cancel the day before, or if they did show up, they would be late, and then I'm paying for the studio space for the shoot. And it was just like really, really hurtful for me. But I found that the easiest fix for that was to just take a deposit for everything all the time, no matter the shoot. If I'm doing a portfolio shoot, I always take a deposit. And then once they get to the shoot on time, I refund the deposit then at the shoot. For every other shoot, I always get a 50% deposit before the shoot. And then I was actually talking to a friend recently, and they told me they do like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, where they get 1/3 before the shoot, 1/3 the day of, 1/3 with final images. Just make sure you are getting money before the shoot and that it's enough to cover any costs you might have to cover before the shoot, so that if they flake on you, you're still compensated for your time. And then finally, I think a lot of my mistakes come from my mindset and honestly just my insecurities. I talked about this earlier, but I was not confident in my skills. I thought like, oh my God, no one's ever gonna pay me that amount. And because they're not gonna pay me that amount that I have calculated is what I should be charging, then I'm just gonna reduce the amount so I know that they'll pay me. And like, what kind of backwards logic is that to go through? No. Like if I go to a restaurant, I expect the restaurant to charge me at least for the cost of the food, plus more for the person preparing for the food, for their expertise, for their time spent, and I should be doing the same. So I would go through these like weird mental acrobatics in order to justify not paying myself just because I wasn't confident in my skills and the value that I provide. Another big mistake that I have made in the past is relying too much on social media as a form of marketing. I think social media is really fun and it's a great way to connect on a personal level with people, but for me, it has not been the most useful way to get new clients. I've actually found that networking, like, of all things, like, you know, networking was always like kind of cringy in college. That has actually been the primary way that I have gotten clients. And so no matter what industry you're in, you just need to think about, where are the people that I want to serve currently at, and how do I get to know them, or how do I get to know influential people who already have connections with them? So a lot of times my referrals, since I'm working with businesses, will come through graphic designers who are already working with these clients. They're getting a rebranding, they're getting a new website, and they need photography on top of that. Or it will come from like web designers who are helping a client and then they need photography, things like that. And so actually what I found to be the most useful for me to get new clients and to market myself was just to get to know and befriend other creatives, which is awesome because of course I want to be friends with creatives. They have the same struggles as I do. They're also creative. We just have so much that we connect on. And it's great because they can also send me referrals and I can send them referrals, and it is perfect. Social media is like a fun outlet for me to share my work, but it is not how I attract new clients. Okay, that is all I have for today. If you are another photographer or creative, let me know in the comments some of the worst mistakes that you have made. Oh, I talked about Weekend Creative earlier, but they have a really funny podcast as well called Per Our Last Email that goes through like these crazy stories of working as a creative and a photographer that I highly recommend. So let me know in the comments what mistakes you have made that you've learned from and that you will never make again. And I'll see you guys in the next video.